I'm bringing my friend Evric Gray on today. We may talk some hoops at some point in time, but with all the craziness that went on over the last week or so, but especially over the weekend, he was one of the first people I thought about, and I thought about him for a number of different reasons, as I outlined at the beginning of the show today. He's my age, and when you're older, I won't call us old, you get a little bit of time and perspective, but Evric's lived in a lot of places, and he's lived a life that I have not led. I've had a lot of perspective on things, but I don't have the same perspective that Evric does on things, and so I thought he'd be a good person to talk to this morning. Ev, how are you?
I am good. It's an interesting time in the world, and it's not in the U.S. It's all over. I mean, it's in Europe, and it's just crazy. But we'll figure it out as a country.
I wanted to ask you, and you and I have talked so many times over the years, but I wanted to ask you as a black man, how your experience has been in this state in particular. We'll talk about some of the bigger issues, but you've lived in a lot of places. You grew up in Los Angeles, and in a rough time in the 80s and early 90s. You lived in Las Vegas. You lived in different places in this country. You lived overseas as well. But I'd just be curious, in a state where there aren't a lot of people that had the same skin color as you compared to some other places where you've lived, how has your experience been here, and how would you judge it compared to some of the other places you've lived?
Utah is actually a good state to live in, and obviously to raise your kids. Obviously, it's not that much a diversity in Salt Lake, but there's pockets of it. Most of the African American and black people here in Utah usually know each other or know of each other. Living here, I haven't ever really had any problems. Maybe because I'm probably a bigger guy. I kind of stay in my own lane, and I don't mess with too many people. But growing up in LA, it's just it's the diversity is way more. I mean, I went to high school with Mexicans, whites, blacks. I grew up mostly with black people, as an elementary and in junior high, and I had to move out to San Bernardino. But living here for the last 20 years. Actually, it's been cool. I mean, I haven't really had any problems here and there. You may have some situations, basketball, coaching AAU basketball, but here locally, I don't play that much here. But it's a good place to raise your family, and majority of the people are good people in Utah. I mean, you have like anywhere, you have not educated people in any race, but. My kids went to BYU, graduated. They're half black, and they didn't have any problems. I mean, here and there, somebody might say something, but you groom your kids for that because it's gonna happen. So you have to groom them for it. So we used to talk about it when they were younger, what ignorant people might say to them.
But that is that unique to Utah, or is that anywhere you go, you're going to find and run into somebody that's going to say something to you, or is it more prevalent here than you've seen other places?
It happens everywhere. I mean, it happens. I lived in the Midwest. I lived in Jersey. I lived in D.C. And it depends. I mean, in the Midwest, when I was in Fort Wayne, Indiana, yeah. But the thing is that in the Midwest, at least you know where they're coming from. They'll let you know exactly where they're coming from. There's no closet to it, no closet racism. It's just they're going to let you know ASAP. But, here, I've really, I haven't had any problems. Really, I haven't. I'm a bigger guy. They always say you're intimidating, but I've never really had any problems here. It's like you kind of get used to it. Like you have this talk. Your parents, when you're growing up, like most white people don't understand, you're going to have this talk, and your parents going to teach you how to get pulled over. I know it sounds crazy, but when you get pulled over, I had that speech at 12, maybe 10 to 12. They teach you how to react and how to be respectful because you don't want to be a statistic. So I know that sounds crazy to some people, but you actually have those, instead of the birds and the bees first, is usually how to react when the police is around.
Did you have that talk with your daughters?
Yeah. I always told them, hey, when you get pulled over, just make sure you have all your stuff ready for the guy. Yes, sir. No, sir. Keep your hands on the steering wheel. Even though they're women, but they don't, they're still African American women. So, I mean, they might be mixed, but they don't look like that. They look black. So, keep your hands on the steering wheel. Make sure you have your paperwork ready, and don't, no subtle moves, especially at night. So you have to have that type of conversation with your kids growing up, and I had that conversation with my dad, and my mom had that conversation with me.
Friend of mine, friend of the program, Evric Gray, with us here. You said something that was interesting. You said, I stay in my lane. I don't really veer out of my lane. Do you do that? Would you do that anywhere you lived, or especially because you were here? And when you say you stay in your lane, what exactly do you mean?
Well, that means I'm kind of like a creature of habit. So that's just my personality. I don't really go. I have a few spots I go to, and my circle is extremely small. And I get that from a UNLV when we used to have our team meetings. Like it was just the NCAA was after us. And you just keep your circle so small. I don't need any more friends, Bill. I have really cool friends. I have Bill. I have, all my teammates. I have really cool friends. I don't need any more friends. So that's why I don't really venture out much. When I go do something, I go do something and get in and get out. I have a list in my head. When I go grocery shopping, I'm in and out. I've been doing that for years. So that's what that means with staying in your lane, in my lane, because I don't want to punch anybody. I don't like punching people. And if you say something stupid to me, I can protect myself. So without using a weapon, I can use me as a weapon. So, but like I said, I've never really had any issues here. Occasionally, like I said, some basketball games, or some parents will say something stupid, but you're kind of used to it, which is ridiculous, but you kind of get used to it. And they don't go across that line with me. They'll say it from afar, but it's just the times we live in. This is just normal. It's just normal for black folks, to be honest. But it's not normal to get your knee on your neck, but for 9 minutes. But it's a tough time right now, and hopefully we can get through this as a country.
Talking to Evric Gray here on the Bill Riley Show. When the last time I can remember real rioting and looting like we had over the weekend across the country was the Rodney King situation in Los Angeles. Boy, that was more than almost 30 years ago. You were in college. You grew up in inner city Los Angeles, but you were at UNLV at the time. And you told me that Jerry Tarkanian had a team meeting with you guys the day the verdict was read. What was that about?
It was just about how to – because we kind of knew it was going to go left. I didn't think they was going to get off, but we met, and it was a couple things happening at the time, which I told you. Remember, that was his last year, which was my junior year. So the season was over, and we had a meeting, but this verdict was about to come out, and we met about what might happen if they found not guilty. And sure enough, it happened, and he wanted us to stay out of harm's way because they didn't know. Nobody really knew what was going to happen. So they didn't really riot that much in Vegas. It was on the north side of Vegas. They rioted a little bit, burned down a couple of buildings, but never got to the Strip. They would never let that happen. But we had a little meeting, what to do. Usually stay inside and wait it out. And that's basically what we did at UNLV. It was an interesting time because Tark was done. They forced him out, but we still had this meeting about what may happen because everybody was still talking about it back home. Back home, my mom was like, "It might go left here if these guys are found now guilty." So it was a trying time, especially during that time. Everybody was on edge. It was almost like this, but it's a little bit different because Rodney didn't get killed. He just got beat up, and those cops got off. But this one was a little bit different because of just the body language of that cop, and it made a lot of people upset how that went down.
No, I agree with you, and I was telling you earlier today, I hated what happened this weekend because I thought the message of what should have been being talked about this weekend got lost because of the rioting and the looting, which was not done, I would say, probably 98% of the time by people that were protesting and trying to honor the memory of George Floyd. You had these paid and criminals and instigators that came into a lot of different communities. Minneapolis was one, Salt Lake was another, and I felt bad because of the message that was lost on the weekend where we should have been trying to talk about change and what happened with George Floyd. We were talking about just everything else. I'd just be curious, as you watched what unfolded, not only here in Salt Lake but around the country this weekend, what your reaction was.
Well, my thing here in Salt Lake was stupid. The people that was rioting, that just, black folks don't really riot like that. I mean, that Ferguson thing a few years back, it was isolated. It was in Ferguson, but turning over cop cars, that's not us. We don't really do that. But it was I felt bad because it doesn't make any sense of rioting and looting. It's idiotic. I was talking to a few of my buddies here, like, dude, this is ridiculous. It's like, don't blame us for that. Don't put us in that group of kids getting attention, basically getting attention because of the situation. So I was very disappointed in the rioting and looting. It just doesn't make any sense. You can do a peaceful protest. I don't mind it, and I think at the Capitol it was peaceful until the knuckleheads showed up and started doing stupid stuff. So around the country, it seems like one person will get going, and the thing about it seems like situations like this happen in the summer when it's hot, and when people are hot and outside is 90 degrees, that's always a problem.
Well, throw the tension of the coronavirus on top of it, too. We were already been on edge, and this just added to it, and I think that was that extra match to the pile of gasoline.
Yeah, guys, people losing their jobs, it's people on unemployment, and it was just an opportunity for some people to get some free stuff. I think they wasn't really down for the cause. I mean, I don't think the Floyd family really wants people out there rioting, looting, and getting people or getting arrested and hurting and getting hurt, and in some cases, in some cities, people getting killed. I saw the football player from Indiana. He's about 38. He got shot 4 or 5 times. So, and he was killed. So, it's a tough time, and the rioting. The thing is that doesn't work. I don't condone violence. Just go out and vote. Do that. You have that be your power.
Well,
use your power by voting.
It's what I said a few minutes ago, and I believe this. Protests are good. They're great. And they don't have to be peaceful, Ev. You can have an angry and emotional protest. What you can't have is a violent protest. The reason you're protesting in general is because you're probably upset and angry about something, and that's all good. That fuels the protest and the emotions. It just can't turn violent. I'd be curious. I'm a big person that's an actions speak louder than words person. Everybody gets on social media and they make these grand proclamations. We've got to be better. We've got to change. Well, you've got to live that. Putting something on your Instagram and your Facebook doesn't make any change. It's going out and living it. We've seen a lot of commissioners, Roger Goodell, Adam Silver, the Major League Rob Manfred, all these sports leagues, a lot of athletic directors, conference commissioners saying, we're going to listen. And I think it's a great time to start listening. You listen first, and then you can act after that. Do you think think there'll be men of their words, though, and allow these athletes who have a little bit of a platform now, based on what we've seen now, do you think maybe the environment's a little bit different and we'll begin to see a little bit more allowance of this in the different sports leagues?
Yeah, I think the NFL is the granddaddy of them all. And Goodell and his people, this is a great opportunity coming off the Kaepernick thing. And this is what Kaepernick said a need. Somebody did a need. This is basically because of this stuff. And now he doesn't look so bad. I mean, it had nothing to do with the military. But I think the NFL is the main power of all. Everybody's an NFL fan. Everybody loves football. And this is a perfect time for the NFL to step up and let these guys speak their mind and go out and hopefully change because I don't care. Racist people, they wear jerseys too. they're football fans too, and I think their words are very powerful. And I'm waiting for Tom Brady to come out. You need one of these big white superstars to come out, especially in the NFL world, like a Tom Brady, even Peyton Manning, even though he's retired, come out and say something. And it means a lot for some people, but will racism go away? No. It's just we got to figure out how to live together.
Well, you got to figure out how to live together, but you've got to figure out how to do away. As you said, racism, there's never going to be a utopia in this world, whether you're in the United States, you're in Africa, you're in Asia, you're in Europe. But
right.
what you can't have is what happened in Minneapolis. You can't have that stuff. That you can't have the people that are paid to protect and preserve life doing what they did to George Floyd. That type of stuff's what's going to have to end. The stuff you talked about, the passive-aggressive, the closet racism, it's always going to be there, whether you're white, whether you're black, whether you're Latino, Mexican, Asian. You're never going to do away with that, but you can't have the overt stuff like we saw in Minneapolis.
Yeah, that's tough, and you shouldn't be nervous. You shouldn't be nervous around the police or anything, especially. But to this day, I'm a ex-athlete, played in the NBA, played in Final Fours. When I see a cop, I get anxiety. It is what it is, and I have cops in my family. I mean, my first cousin is the new chief of police of Chicago, so I have policemen in my family. But it's just the way you were raised, and that's just what it is. And I'm sorry that we're in this situation, but I wish I could make it better.
It doesn't go ahead. Finish your thought.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it doesn't go away overnight. This is something that's going to take a long. What you feel inside, what other minorities and black folks feel inside when a police officer rolls up on them, that doesn't go away overnight. That's going to take a long time to go away, but it's got to start somewhere.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we got to take baby steps. We got to crawl before we walk, and we're still talking about this in 2020. And like I told you, Bill, we talked earlier, 2020 has been terrible. It's been terrible, man. It's been bad, man. The coronavirus hit in January. Then Kobe died on the same day. It's just been terrible. And all I can say is I know racism is – you're not born that way. Because I have my grandkids, through my girlfriend, pretty much they're white and they love me to death. And they don't even see – they just see Pop. That's all they see. So – I'm glad you're talking about this. Hopefully you can get more athletes on and talk about it, especially locally, so we can get these people calmed down downtown.
Can I start calling you Pop?
No.
Okay.
That's a negative.
Fair enough. Hey, thanks for coming on. Thanks for sharing today. Thanks for being my friend, and I'll talk to you soon.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
All right, that's Evric Gray.